There's a particular sound a person makes when they are trying not to ask for help. It isn't a cry, not loud enough for that. It's a swallow between the ribs. A careful apology you learn to breathe. In places like this, filtered air, beige hallways, the clean smell of lemon disinfectant, people practice swallowing their need until something pushes back. Here, the pushback is a red button the size of a quarter. You press it because something hurts, because you can't turn yourself,
And tonight,
because you
a
are alone in a
major
room with the
announcement is
TV at
expected from the
19 and a
Capitol
dignity that has to be
concerning new
scheduled.
policy
The
changes.
button answers in a soft bell, a polite blink outside your door. The promise is someone is coming. Tonight the button lies. Tonight the light above 217 blinks into the carpeted silence like a lighthouse everybody pretends is for someone else. I know the silence because I run in it. My name is Asha. I am 28 and my back is 38 on good days. I wear scrubs the color people call calming blue, like that's a thing fabric can do. On my badge, CNA. On my body, last week's bruises from a lift gone sideways because we were 2 pairs of hands short. In my head, the math of the Unit 9 residents, 2 turns overdue, 1 IV pump complaining like a cat. In my pocket, a pen light, a roll of tape, and the unglamorous fact that when I say I'll be back in 5 minutes, I know it really means 13. Room 27 is Mr. Lionel Hart, former letter carrier, now a man whose legs still remember the rhythm of a route his flesh cannot complete. When he laughs, the hallway brightens. When he presses that button, the hallway stares at his shoes. I am halfway through rehanging a catheter bag when I hear it. Ding, ding, ding. Then the triple blink above his door. The nurse station light panel adds another red bead to its necklace. I look at the clock. I listen for footsteps that aren't mine. I hear a printer. I hear a phone call rehearsed to sound friendly. I hear the respectable hush of a place with a 5-star banner near the entrance doors and a laminate brochure promising person-centered excellence. I move. By the time I reach him, his face is the color of a question mark. The sheets are warm beneath him in the way that warms like warning. I roll him gently, body mechanics like a prayer I've said 1,000 times, and the skin along his sacrum glows pinked and angry. Stage 1, if we're lucky. Stage 2, if the light is honest. I tell him what I'm doing in a voice that does not punish him for needing me. My mother taught me that voice, make it sound like a bridge, not a bill. And because wishes are for people with time, I document. The camera app we fought for, HIPAA safe, stamped, uploaded to a folder with a name no one searches unless forced. I measure. I note the time the call light began and the moment I saw him. I write that difference down like a piece of confession, even though the only sin here is a staffing matrix printed in 12-point font. When Mr. Hart exhales, the room lets go. He says,
Always.
Knew you'd come, Miss Asha. And I say, always, because sometimes you use your mouth to steady the part of the world you can reach. And then, because nothing heroic happens if you don't keep walking, I change his brief, replace the damp with clean, smooth the sheet, and turn his pillow into a better horizon. He falls asleep mid-thank you. I tuck the edge. Outside, the corridor does what corridors do. Old Secret's upright. It displays the art picked by someone who thinks landscapes calm you into compliance. It swallows the memory of who pressed what when. But I carry memory in ink. At the nurse's station, under the soft light meant to flatter nobody's pores, Ellen is perched, director of nursing. A woman who can pronounce equity with the ease of latte foam, but who also knows how to weaponize tone, like a stethoscope.
We will do everything
She
we can
is
to
talking
help you
about
through this.
culture. To a family whose son is worried about hospice, and the way her hand touches her necklace tells me she's rehearsed that gesture. I'll place the printout next to the keyboard. Census on the left, staffing matrix on the right. Missing CNA hours circled in the same red gel pen I use for wound borders because sometimes you have to make the math bleed a little to make it visible.
Do this again
She
soon.
doesn't look right away. Ellen likes to create a stage and then make you wait for your
that
cue.
sounds
When
lovely.
she does look, she smiles like I brought her flowers. What's this? She asks,
What's this?
as if the question is a courtesy.
It is what
It's
you
tonight's
believe it to
variance, I
be.
say. 2 CNAs floated to the other wing. RN coverage pulled to the short stay unit. Calls unanswered. Mr. Hart progressed. She frowns the way people frown when they need to borrow your clarity. Asha,
I'm
you
telling
know
you,
we don't
this is
weaponize
how it has to
paperwork.
be.
If
No,
you have
I
a
won't do it
concern,
that way.
use the appropriate channel. This is the appropriate channel. She knows it, I know it. But the only channels that matter here are the ones that carry money. My paper is not their river. Also, she adds, voice turning gentle and sharp,
We
I
understand each
received a
other
complaint
now,
about
don't
your
we?
tone. Families feel judged. Families feel delayed, I do not say. They feel what delay teaches, that they must make themselves small to be seen. She picks up the paper. She folds it once, twice, the way you fold a letter you never plan to send. She does not throw it away. She slips it under a binder that says Service Recovery in 19-point font. Let's remember our person-centered language, she says with a smile that always arrives with a reminder.
Today
We say
are
concerned,
focusing on
not angry.
service recovery.
We say care partner, not daughter. We speak life. The only life language I trust counts minutes. I return to my rounds. I chart in the convenient boxes that will later be audited for opportunities for improvement. I watch the call panel blink, and I move toward it, and my calves burn in the way of a woman carrying 8 bodies on a shift meant for 4. By midnight, we are an orchestra of compromise. Maya, the charge nurse, is a metronome tapping the keys. 1, 2, 3, document, document, document. And when she gets a second, she leans toward me. They told me to optimize charting language for timeliness, she murmurs. You mean write prompt? Even when it wasn't? She doesn't answer. She doesn't have to. We both learn how some words tidy not the care, but the perception of it. At 1 a.m., the call light over 217 blinks again. The TV still murmurs the late show into the walls. I am in 221 coaxing fluid from a stubborn IV pump. I hit my own button, assistance requested, and the station screen pings back a neutrality that tastes like brushed steel. No one else is coming. I excuse myself to a resident who always blesses me when I leave, and I run. I find Mr. Hart's breath caught on the hill again, his body warm and wet, and the skin now speaks louder. The blush has a border. A technician would call it stage 2. I call it failure. I do everything I can in a world designed to ask me for what is impossible, and then grade me on how I smile through it. I cue the incident report while I wrap the wound. I call the on-call. I document the time the button began to beg and the moment the help arrived. At 2 a.m, the corridor is a church where nobody confesses. At 2:30, the note I print about staffing variance has more ink on it than any policy I've been handed in months. At 3, the med room denies me with a square beep, my badge on the sensor. The reader answers a cold DEEID, a sound that makes you feel as though the door knows your place. We are very, very orderly about who is allowed to protect whom. And then somewhere around 4, the world shifts from night to apology. The windows go glass gray. The coffee machine gurgles like it survived the night too. And the day staff arrive with fresh ponytails and the optimism of people who slept.
Good morning.
The first family appears with a Tupperware of something home-cooked because love looks like stew in places like this. And so does performance. We huddle. It is that ritual that pretends to be choir. People call this interdisciplinary. I call it a roll call for who will be blamed if the wind changes.
Everyone needs to be aware of
Ellen
the
is there,
discharge
a
procedures.
clipboard's height above
Good morning,
everyone else.
everyone. Let's
Darius
get
is there
started.
too, the administrator. The kind of black man who wears a suit that fits like a decision. The kind who learned early that the difference between survival and loss is how exquisitely you
This
manage
team
the expectations
is a
of the people
family,
signing your paychecks.
and we all
He calls
support each
people
other.
family and team, and you can feel how it keeps a lid on the pot. Today, the pot chooses me. A quick note, Ellen
So,
says,
Asha,
smiling in
tell
a
us
way
what you
that
think.
says, quick will not be quick. We want to
We really
cultivate
need
a
to
healthy
discuss
culture
this
of
incident
accountability.
unnecessary
That starts with
agitation.
tone. Last night, there was an incident of unnecessary agitation at the nurse station. I feel 40 eyes graze me like wind. I do not move. I was raised in rooms where moving
Asha.
gave you away. Asha, she says, sweet as saccharin, we're going to coach you today on remaining respectful and using the chain of command. She
Insubordination.
has a paper. It has my name. It has the
Hostile
words
unit
insubordination and hostile unit culture
Written
and the
warning.
small white boxes where somebody checked
Any breach of
written
protocol
warning.
involving the
She
unauthorized
reads it
access
out
or
loud.
manipulation of
She
classified
reads it like a
experimental
prayer
data
you
will
say
result
over
in
someone you
immediate
decided to
termination.
save from themselves. Around us,
This is not
families
fair
pass
to
little
me.
paper
This is
cups of
not
gelatin to
fair.
people with last names. The volunteer in the purple vest who always calls me honey
Good
pauses to
morning.
watch.
This is your celebrity
Somewhere on the
update.
TV, an anchor tells another story about a celebrity. Somewhere in room 217, a button waits to be pressed again. I sign because refusal would be the story. I sign because sometimes you cannot argue and keep the hallway from thinking you are the problem. But I flip the
Staffing
packet, and on
variance
the last
plus delayed
page,
call
the one meant for my
responses
comment,
documented.
the whisper, I write, staffing variance plus delayed
See
call
attachments
responses
A to
documented.
D.
See attachments AD. I do not underline it. I do not write in red. I write in the small black letters that carry the weight of a woman who has decided to make the truth patient enough to get into the room. When dismissal releases us, Darius catches my eye and lifts a finger. Not a beckon, a summons. In his office, the carpet is thicker. The air conditioner believes in itself. There are framed certificates for outcomes and throughput and an award for something with the word innovation in metallic ink. On his shelf, a photo of him smiling with the regional VP, both of them pointing at a chart vined upward like a growth sermon. He looks at me the way you look at a cousin at a family reunion who says the real thing into a mic. Asha, he begins, gentle, as if we are sharing a porch.
You are the best.
You're good at your job. Some say the best. But you can't keep making us look bad. These incident reports are true. Truth and timing, he says, palms up. We need to attract commercial payers. Our mix is 65% Medicaid. Do you know what that does to margins? The state's late on reimbursements again? We have to be strategic. Pick your battles. He is using a language I know by its smell.
With a side of shame.
Pragmatism with a side of shame. I can feel him measuring me for the kind of Black woman who ruins a plan by telling the truth at the wrong hour. Can I ask, I say, and I do not permit my voice to climb, how many minutes is promptly in our policy for high-risk call lights? He leans back. He glances at the air vent like it contains an answer. It says promptly, nursing judges feasibility. And who audits feasibility? Ellen does. His jaw moves. And corporate. It is an answer that contains all the answers. He leans forward, drops the sugar. Look, regulators don't love us. You hand them paper and they make headlines out of it. That helps you? His voice is softer now, lower kinship as a scalpel. You work hard. I know where you came from. Don't let them use you to punish the house we're trying to protect.
I know where you came from.
There it is. The accusation wrapped as advice. The suggestion that my insistence on a clock is a betrayal of the skin we share. The door behind his words opens into the sunken place and invites me to sit. I stand there with my hands folded and my shoulders remembering last night's lifts and my throat swallowing the kind of fire that makes you unemployed. I nod once. I don't agree. I don't disagree. I let him see what careful looks like. When I step out, the hallway smells like breakfast and bleach. At the station, the printer kicks out a fresh stack of discharge instructions with the early checkouts. Gotta turn those beds. Maya sidles up, eyes tired, mouth set.
Watch this.
They put a macro in the system, she whispers, opening the charting interface to show me. Under call response, a drop-down now includes prompt response within policy as the default. It will take 3 clicks to say otherwise. A small, bureaucratic gravity tilts the truth toward convenience. Who asked for that? I ask.
Optimization.
Optimization, she says, and the word dissolves on her tongue like a tablet under duress. I think of Mr. Hart's skin and the way the pink rimmed its own grief. I think of the light above his door thinking had a covenant with the room. I think of the way a default setting can make a lie feel like a courtesy. At lunch, if you can call that window a lunch. I sit on the back steps with a protein bar and 30 seconds of sky. The smokers used to gather here until the policy chased them to the far lot. I look at the little square of blue and I remember being 15 and watching my mother's hands soak in hot water before a double shift because heat can trick your body into thinking it's ready to do it again. I text her, still breathing? She texts back, always. She taught me not to confuse surviving with consent. The afternoon is a river with white-capped hours. There are showers to give, linens to change, a wound nurse who rounds like a storm, and a family that asks if we can make the room smell less like hospital, as if we can Febreze a system. I move like this place owes me for what I know. I chart like every keystroke might one day be a witness. And because humiliation is never satisfied with one act, it returns at 3, dressed as pedagogy. There's an in-service at the end of the hall. Someone put out cookies with tones, a performative hygiene. The slide on the screen reads, culture of care, communication in heat-stress environments. Ellen stands in front of it with the confidence of a woman whose PowerPoint will always be right because it is projected.
And now for our first
We're going to role play,
exercise.
She says. We're going to explore how language can de-escalate.
Asha.
She picks me. Of course she picks me. Because nothing says we're a family, like selecting the cousin who wouldn't clap for the song. She plays the family member, crossing her arms. I pressed the button 3 times. No one came. Play me. I'm sorry you waited. We were short-staffed and... Stop, she says, smiling. We don't say short-staffed. We say, thank you for your patience. I'm here now. Focus on solutions. I want to ask her if solutions ever get you a second pair of hands at 2A. M. I want to ask her if gratitude can be written down in a note to prevent a sore. I want to ask her why her slides never have numbers on them, only values. Instead, I let the room learn the lesson they came to learn, that performance, done robustly enough, can make a wound appear cooperative. After, as we collect our badges and our composure, Ellen makes her way to me. She lowers her voice.
You are talented,
the intimacy of discipline.
But you need
Look,
to be
she
strategic.
says, you're talented. I see it, but we can't escalate every concern. Be strategic. Use the chain. We're on the same team. When someone says team and means hierarchy, you feel it in your knees. I smile the way women smile
Of
when the
course.
conversation cannot contain the truth without burning the carpet. Of course, I say, and the words taste like compromise, which is to
Did you
say,
see that?
they taste like the absence of air.
I know,
Back at the
right?
station, the volunteer in purple whispers to another people always have a shorthand for women who are inconvenient. You can't hear the adjective, only the tone. I file the moment on the same shelf I keep everything that might one day matter. And then,
As per
the
policy
second
number
humiliation. The write-up goes
457.9,
from rumor
this
to
written
poster.
warning for
At
unprofessional
shift
conduct
change,
is to be
in front
read
of families
in
and
full.
staff and the TV and the plant that has somehow not died,
The
Ellen
note
reads the
states that
formal
the
language the
patient,
system uses to
Asha,
call a woman
was
angry
angry
when what
during
she
the
is
encounter.
accurate. She names me
It's
insubordinate
insubordinate
because
for
I
you
put
to
a
place
paper
the
on a
paper on
desk.
my desk.
She calls it hostile because I did not sweeten the
You're
math.
being
I
hostile for
sign
not
again
sweetening
because
the
the
math.
spectacle has rules, and one of them is you let it finish its bow. But this time when I sign, my hand does not shake. This time I turn the packet over, and in the little
Staffing
space
variance
reserved for the
plus
condemned to say
delayed call
something nice,
responses
I write in
documented.
print so plain it glows. Staffing variance plus delayed call responses documented. See attachments, AD. I sign my name the way my mother taught me to sign when she had me practice signatures on the kitchen table with a ballpoint legible enough to be undeniable. After, the hallway spills me into itself. The air conditioner hums the song of an institution that believes in thermostats more than it believes in clocks. Mr. Hart's daughter, Kiana, arrives with a box of cookies shaped like leaves. She has the smile of a woman trying to put kindness into circulation. When she asks about her father, I answer with the truth and the edges sanded down because there is a way to tell people what they need to know without making their fear climb the walls. She listens. She nods. She reads my face like a second chart. I watch her watch me, and I feel the weight of being the person who tells her daughter that her father's body is a math problem, and that if the numbers do not change, the problem solves itself into damage. She thanks me. I excuse myself. I go to the med room and present my badge like a pilgrim. The reader denies me again with a square beep. Denied, because respectability has rules about who gets access to what salvation. I press the intercom and someone sighs and lets me in. The day slides toward evening like a tray of silverware, noisier than it should be, inevitable. The sun finds the blinds. The TV switches to local news where crime is reported by a man who has never needed a button answered by anyone but the world. Dinner carts roll. Pills rattle in little cups like a percussion section. And under the symphony, the same blink, the same bell, the same negotiation with reality. By 7, my feet feel like translations of other feet. By 7:15, the night crew appears. Eyes still adjusting, voices careful, exchanging what passed for war reports of who needs what and how soon and how likely the how soon is to hurt. I hand off with a strictness some see as severity.
Is he on the
But
2
you
to 1
learn
or the
that
1
if
to
you
1?
whisper the things that matter, they
2 to
slip
1
through
for
the
now.
paperwork. Mr. Hart, turn schedule every 2
Mr.
hours,
Hart
no
needs to be
exceptions, I
turned
say.
every 2
If the call light
hours.
goes off, I want you to
That's
take it like
critical
he's
for
your
his
father
care.
asking for water. The CNA who's got him tonight nods. She is new in the way the new always is, eager and soft in places the building will sand. I put my hand on her shoulder, and the gesture feels like an oath. We don't have words for yet. I clock out. My feet scream. My back negotiates terms. My key ring is heavier than it reasonably should be. Outside, the sky is the color of a fresh chance painted thin. In the parking lot, I sit in my car and stare at the dash with the engine off long enough to hear the small tick of the heart of a machine cooling. My hands shake, not from fear, but from the unspent electricity of a day that didn't allow me to plug into justice. I take out my phone, I
Federal
open my
pilot
personal
team
email.
civilized
The subject line is
preliminary
already
log.
typed. 2, Federal Pilot Team, preliminary
Call light
log.
latency
My
audit.
finger hovers,
Unit
then
B.
lands. I write what I know, clean and complete. Call light latency audit. Unit B, PBJ variance versus census, last 90 days. Stage progression, rooms 217, 214, 29. Default macro added, prompt response within policy. Policy review needed, defined promptly in minutes with acuity waiting. Family witness available, Kiana Hart. I attach nothing yet. I list the attachments, AD like a promise to myself to breathe tomorrow into receipts. I do not send. Not yet. I save the draft and the unsent email sits like a fuse with manners. In my rear view, I see Darius walk the corridor, suit jacket over one arm. He pauses to shake the hand of a donor whose name is etched into a plaque near the entrance. He is good at being seen. He is very good at it. Through the glass, the lobby looks like a hotel that hired a conscience as a consultant. On the drive home, the city tries to convince me it is normal. Gas stations glow like confessions. A bus exhales its route into the dark. At a red light, I rub the inside of my wrist where the elastic of my glove leaves a small crescent. I think of my mother's hands in the kitchen sink at 5 a.m. Steam rising, heat waking the bones. I think of the way we inherit endurance like an heirloom. Nobody knows how to put in a will. My apartment greets me with the ordinary miracle of electricity. I take off my shoes as if they might complain. I shower the day off bleach and breath and the delicate grief of other people's families. Water hits my shoulders like honesty. I stand under it until the clock on my phone says the rent wants me out. I make tea because tea is what you do when coffee would be a dare. I sit at the table where a plant somebody said was impossible to kill proves them wrong by thriving on neglect and sunlight. I open the laptop that sometimes feels like a scalpel. This is where I keep the other part of me, the part that learned to read a payroll like a map, the part that knows a word like feasible needs a timestamp to keep it honest, the part that took a training months ago in a church basement with fluorescent lights that nobody knew how to make warm, where a woman from OSHA taught 20 of us how to recognize hazard patterns as if we were learning a language our grandmothers spoke. Community liaison, the paper said when they gave me the badge. The paper also said protected activity. The paper did not say how protection feels like a window you're not sure will hold during a storm. I opened the folder, Part 217. I opened the call log export I persuaded IT to share months ago by asking for it like it was a curiosity instead of a conviction. I opened the spreadsheet that began as a stubborn woman's midnight and became a small city of cells arranged into a testimony. Time pressed versus time answered. The deltas march in columns, a blonde parade of numbers that do not flinch when you frown at them. I add tonight's intervals. I write the notes in clear, dull prose that does not intend to impress, only insist. In another tab, the PBJ, the payroll-based journal that tells the truth only if you ask it the right questions. Hours by roll, day, wing. I chart the missing bodies as if their absence produces heat. Pattern emerges like bruise. Weekends sink, evenings thin, Medicaid wing starves quietly while the short stay keeps its calories. I make a graph. I do not pick a dramatic color. The line dramatizes itself. I copy a policy and paste it into a document titled Crosswalk. I write in bold, promptly, must mean minutes. I write in italics. Metrics are a morality. I delete the italics and put the idea back into numbers because I know how this world listens. And then I do the most radical thing I would do all night. I stop. I let the work remain incomplete. I close the laptop gently, like you put a baby down when you hope it will stay asleep. In bed, sleep arrives like a bus that will only wait at the stop if you stand there with your fare ready. I dream that the call light is a heartbeat and that every blink is a syllable in a language I can almost understand. Morning decides itself without my permission. The phone alarm offers a small mercy, a song I chose that reminds me of childhood porches and a Sunday that could hold you if you let it. I dress. The mirror tells me a truth I accept. I look like someone who has learned how to make tired, not the headline. At the facility, the lobby's flowers have been refreshed, the receptionist's voice calibrated for the day's first plan of care meeting.
Me too.
A family sits with a folder and a face like a weather report predicting rain. The clock insists. On the unit, it is both the same and a little worse. Mr. Hart slept poorly. The wound nurse's note is cautious. Maya is moving with a new stiffness in her left shoulder. A tendon that knows payroll and gravity have made a pact. The macro still defaults to prompt response within policy, and the cursor hovers over it like a yawn. Eye round. I repeat the rituals that safety pretends are sufficient. Hand gel, gloves, smile, words like, let's get you comfortable, and the quiet calculus of who needs what first. At the station, Ellen is reviewing charts with the air of a sommelier judging vintages. She glances up. Asha, she says, let's connect at 10. Quick coaching, career development. Career development is a bouquet you bring to a funeral when you cannot say the name of the dead thing. 10 works, I say. At 9:57, I wash my hands with the thoroughness of someone who wants to keep what she can clean. At 9:58, I print one more page. Tonight's deltas added to the last 90 days. A single column flagged like a parade nobody wants to march in. At 9:59, I straighten my badge until the photo looks like me. At 10, I walk in. The room is a small stage with plant, certificate, a framed mission statement that could be purchased in a pack of 4 off the internet. Ellen sits at the head, posture a diagram. Darius claims a side chair like a captain. The table smells faintly of lemon and something like apology. Thanks for coming, Ellen says. We want to support your growth. There's a card on the table that says safe space in a font that will be at home in a wellness newsletter. I pretend the card is made of glass and step around it. They talk about tone. They talk about pathways. They talk about how we don't escalate. They talk about our brand with a sincerity that knows its audience is debt service. I listen until the floor feels steady.
What about the new
Then I
budget
ask the only
proposal
question I
then?
brought. What is the maximum response
What is
time
the
for high-risk
maximum
call lights per
response time for
policy?
high-risk
They
call
exchange a
lights
look.
per
The
policy?
kind of look practiced by people used to always having the answer on the next slide. Promptly, Ellen says, then adds quickly, as feasible. And who defines feasibility? I ask.
Promptly.
Nursing judgment, she says, and smiles like she's giving me a gift. I slide a folder across the table. Paper against wood is a sound that ought to have its own word. I open it, slow as liturgy. PBJ versus census. 90 days, I say. Call light response audit hall camera timestamps cross-matched with nurse call logs. Pressure injury progression map. Rooms 217, 214, 29. Ellen's smile remains on her face the way makeup remains after a good cry. Darius reaches professional curiosity as camouflage and flips a page. The numbers do what numbers do when you show them what they are. They speak without trembling. I say nothing else. Not yet. Because humiliation loves a vacuum, they fill it. This is thorough, Ellen says, which is how some people pronounce threatening. We appreciate your initiative, but there are channels. Darius nods, steepling his fingers as if the gesture itself confers wisdom. We're all on the same side. We don't want to create exposure while we're in the middle of pair negotiations. I think of exposure like skin. I think of wounds like clocks. I reach into the folder again. I place a badge on the table, not the one with my photo, the other one. The one from a church basement with bad lights that says OSHA Community Lays and in block letters that do not care about tone. I place a letter on top of it. It uses phrases like protected activity and non-retaliation and pilot facility and federal with the seriousness of a courtroom. I do not raise my voice. I do not lean forward like a threat. I say very gently, like I am offering them a map out of their own weather. I've been logging hazards in accordance with the staffing ratio pilot. I have not yet submitted the last 2 weeks. I plan to. I wanted to bring you the numbers first. Silence is not empty. It is filled with the arithmetic of consequences. Ellen places her fingers on the edges of the paper like the table is moving and she needs to feel something steady. Darius sits back as if the chair has grown teeth. The plant in the corner does not help. I add one more sheet. The one with the line that runs like a horizon call light latency, plotted against pressure injury stage advancement. The correlation is so neat, it looks like design. We can define promptly, I say. We can make feasibility measurable. We can put the same dashboard in the lobby that you see upstairs. Or we can let the numbers arrive with strangers. It is not a threat. It is a fork. Ellen opens her mouth. The word that wants to come out is tone. The word that does come out is process. Darius says nothing, which is a language of its own. Outside the glass, somewhere down the corridor, a call light blinks. The panel pings. The red above a door speaks as a little square of urgency. I let them hear it. I let the room fill up with the sound of somebody needing. I pick up my badge. The letter remains on the table like a candle. I stand. When I leave, the hallway air feels different charged, like the moment before a storm decides you personally. Nurses move with a tight choreography of people who felt a tremor. Families watch the station as if the desk will confess. I pass 217. Mr. Hart is awake. He sees me. He gives me the small salute we invented on a day his right hand remembered something his back could not. I return it. I check the sheet. I check the skin. I check the clock. In the distance, behind the double doors, I hear it.
Everything is going
the quiet
to be
thunder
all
of
right.
multiple
Just try
pairs
to
of
rest
shoes
now.
moving in coordination. The clipboards are coming. The language of arrival has a sound. But that is another act. Right now, the button is blinking. And I am here. In my voice. The one my mother built from, keep going and you're right and it's okay to cry after. It's steady enough to say what needs saying into rooms that prefer to be told they are good. I press the chart's enter key like a doorbell. And I wait to see who answers. There's a temperature. The air reaches when truth enters a room. Not hot like anger, not cold like avoidance. It's the charged neutral of a thunderhead deciding where to put the lightning. When I set the badge down and let the letter breathe on the table, the air found that temperature. People like to think power is loud. Often, it's just the sound of someone not apologizing for the numbers. I walked out while the room struggled to locate a script. Behind me, I could feel two different kinds of silence wrestling. The administrative silence that hopes a meeting can metabolize reality, and the clinical silence that hears the call light and knows what time it is. In the hallway, the station light panel kept its slow Morse code of need. I did what I always do first. I went where someone was asking for me. That is not strategy. That's the oath you keep when you've got a badge that counts minutes, not titles. Mr. Hart's skin was calm for the moment, a color that looked like an
Are
exhale,
you
not
feeling
an
all right
apology.
today,
I
dear?
checked edges. I checked moisture. I checked the way the sheet had learned a new humility. He watched me with the patience of a man who carried a city on his legs long enough to know that speed is not the same as care. He said with his eyes what the building tries to tease people out of, "Thank you for not making me pay for pressing the button." Back at the station, a rumor had burned legs. You can always tell a rumor by the way it looks at you with too much certainty. People stopped in twos and threes. Someone from dietary, hairnet still snug, studied my face like it contained a weather report for their paycheck. The volunteer in purple pretended to organize pens by color. Maya tapped the keys with the ferocity of a woman deciding whether to save her own shoulders or the chart's virtue. I said nothing. I let the glow from the monitor write a new light into the day. The email draft in my pocket pulsed like a second pulse. The attachments were still only promises. I needed the world to produce itself as witness before I added one more cell. I needed feet. Feet arrived. If you've worked in a place like this long enough, you know the gait of an inspector. They walk like they belong and like they wish they didn't have to.
What do we tell them?
They carry clipboards like shields and pens like scalpels. They have a facial expression that looks like a hypothesis wearing a suit. Two men and a woman with OSHA badges, soft-soled shoes making no noise at all, appeared as if the building had thought them into existence. You don't ever get used to the way an unannounced visit fits into a corridor.
Good morning,
but you learn to
gentlemen.
locate yourself quickly inside the new
How may I
grammar.
help you today?
A minute later, two state surveyors, one with a tablet that could end budgets and the other with the gentle eyes of someone who's seen this movie too many times, parted the air.
Good to see you again.
It was not a raid. It was a mirror.
Do not
There's a
grandstand.
choreography these events
Do
trigger.
your job
Administration
exquisitely.
tries to make hospitality look like transparency. Nursing tries to make calm look like capacity. Staff try to decide which part of the truth can fit through their throat without getting them fired or making them complicit. Families listen, and then they film. Maya's thumb hovered over the macro, prompt response within policy, as if it were a detonator that had been misnamed.
We need to
She
review
didn't
your
click.
current
She
policy
waited.
binder, please.
She waited because she could feel inspectors breathing like metronomes, and metronomes make some people honest. Ellen emerged from the office with a smile that had worked on donors and visiting clergy
Joe.
and board members and a certain kind of white paper. It was a good smile. It was also unarmed against a stopwatch. Darius appeared after, jacket back on, hair smoothed into plausibility. He knows how to greet a threat with a handshake. Here is what they teach you in liaison training. In that church basement with fluorescent lights and coffee that tastes like its own penance, do not run toward the inspectors. Do not grandstand. Do your job exquisitely. Let the numbers do their job. If asked, answer as if the paper is listening, and it is. The OSHA lead nodded to me. A nod like a switch flipped. He didn't call my name. He didn't need to. We both knew what the badge on the table
5,
meant.
6,
He
7,
knew what
8.
had probably been happening in the quiet hours when a macro writes fiction over fatigue. He went past me with the neutrality of someone who has to lay their own feelings on a shelf to be good at his work. The state surveyors split. One toward the
Nights
station to
sink,
request policies,
and weekends
the other
thin.
toward the rooms where people press buttons and wait. Kiana was in the corridor with the day's first coffee. She looked at the badges and then at me. The kind of glance you can't fake, ask, answer, thank you all in one. I gave her a small nod and slid a folded card across the counter. Family council contact meeting tonight. She took it like you take a map. Somebody offers you when you realize your phone has no signal. By 10:30, the unit had changed key. We had moved from singing to humming. Paper had entered the bloodstream. IT, somewhere behind a door that never admits us, had frozen edit permissions on certain audit trails. Little invisible locks arrived on the charting screens like frost. The macro did not disappear. It just stopped being the only sentence in the room. I went about the math I always do. I lifted, I cleaned,
Communication
I turned.
breakdown.
I explained. But I also counted calmly, the way you count when counting is an act of witness, not complaint. An inspector asked me quietly, without any performance, about the call light intervals on this wing. He did not hurry my answer. He did not make my words walk through a PowerPoint. I told him the same truth I had written in my spreadsheet, but I told it in the language of the hallway. Nights sink.
We need to be open
Weekends
and
thin.
honest about what's
The
happening.
Medicaid rooms are far from the station, and the short-stay beds are close. The default on the screen is faster than the
Tweak
door.
on me.
He nodded once.
We need
Noted,
to discuss
not judged.
regionals.
It is astonishing what a
narrative
different
mitigation.
shaped truth takes when nobody is scoring it for tone. There is a part of me, the part that organizes receipts and makes column headings sing, that wanted to run to the office, scan the letter, send the email, and light the fuse. But the better part of me knows that you do not interrupt a
Let's
patient
take a
breath,
deep breath.
introduce your own oxygen. And I was breathing for people who pressed buttons and waited. By noon, the questions had multiplied. Inspectors ask for policy definitions and receive what every inspector knows they will receive. Words like promptly and feasible and best judgment, drifting like steam over a cold clock. They requested staffing plan variances by day and were handed paper that looked better on paper than it lived in the hall. They requested the grievance log, the log obliged, sanitized into phrases like communication breakdown, where the bones read no one came. At 1, the union organizer appeared in the parking lot because all stories, whether this place likes it or not, open onto the street. She held leaflets. She held a list of back pay cases the corporation had settled quietly in another zip code. She held a smile that said she had been here before and would be again. She did not enter. She did not need to. Paper knows how to travel. Ellen tried a huddle, as if collecting people into a tight circle could repel a data set. She talked about the importance of being open, of being honest, of being constructive. She did not talk about minutes. Darius talked to a corner of the room where the camera wasn't, phone to his ear, the words, regionals, narrative, and mitigation, swimming up and down like minnows. The staff listened with the attention of people who might be punished by both truth and its absence. I recognized the expression that crossed Ellen's face when she opened the policy binder and found the section where promptly had been circled in highlighter, my highlighter, weeks ago.
Distance is one of the quietest forms of discrimination.
It's the expression of someone who is about to discover whether their leadership is gravity or just lighting. I had a different job now, and it was the same job I always had. Touch the button, show up. A resident in 214 coughed with that fine sawdust cough that tells you the lungs are asking you to listen harder. A woman in 209 needed water, but more than water, she needed someone to hold the cup like she was not a chore. A man in 220 begged with his eyes to be turned before he asked with his mouth.
A good witness's gratitude
Between these,
shows up later,
the station light panel held its steady vandalism of silence. Nothing in me wanted Ellen to be humiliated the way she liked to humiliate. I am not an eye-for-eye person. Eyes are too precious to spend. But I wanted something I would have sworn was impossible on Monday. I wanted Ellen to have to lead in a world measured by clocks, not compliments.
Your heads up.
I wanted to watch what a value does when it is asked to pay cash. I felt Darius's gaze on me as the day unspooled like ribbon from a spool that thought it would never end. He is very good at taking the temperature of a room.
We need to organize
the temperature now wasn't mine to control.
Yes,
it was set by people who knew how to count flips and clicks and steps and stops. He approached me once, saying my name in a tone like a palm extended, not empty of warning but softened by an old familiarity. I nodded. I kept my spine an instrument. If you need suspense, watch numbers move. In the late afternoon, the inspectors requested an anonymized export of call light logs for the past 30 days.
We're doing everything we can.
IT hesitated.
This is out of
Policy,
our control.
Permissions, the little bureaucratic dance that keeps the public from seeing how the sausage is made. The OSHA lead reminded them of a clause. The file appeared. I recognized the line of time like it was a friend's handwriting I could spot across a crowd. The state surveyor with the gentle eyes asked to walk the long hall to the Medicaid wing, the one with the carpet that remembers spills and the handrail that holds more weight than any official wants to think about. We walked it together. It takes longer than the short stay loop. It always has. Distance is one of the quietest forms of discrimination. It charges a tax and steps from the people least able to pay. At the far end, a woman's voice, thin as thread, called out a name. Not mine, not anyone's, just the weight of a syllable she thought might hold a person. I went. The surveyor followed, as if shadowing a law at work. The button hung like a red fruit under the light. She had pressed it. She had waited. I made the room correct for itself. The surveyor watched the way I moved, how I said what I was doing, what I saw, what I would check, like reciting a spell that only works because you mean it. He didn't say thank you. He didn't need to. A good witness's gratitude shows up later in the shape of a paragraph. By 5, a little email icon in my pocket told me the draft in my outbox had company. I pulled the phone out by the vending machine, the one with snacks the facility buys at cost and resells at hope. I had a message from the pilot team, short and domestic, received your heads up, proceed with normal duties. We're on site, secure your logs, no further action required at this time. Remember your protections. The words, remember your protections, feel like a blanket that covers your shoulders and your ankles, but leaves your toes in the cold. I put the phone away. I secured nothing but my face. Kiana watched the inspectors with the focused rage of a woman who has found the seam in a lie and is not yet ready to tear. She spoke to another daughter by the window in the waiting area. I do not know what she said, only that the other woman's eyebrows lifted and been knit. A murmuration of family murmurs gathered. A building can sense when a constituency realizes it is a constituency. Ellen's posture changed as the day darkened. She began to point with her whole hand, not one finger. A good sign. She asked questions instead of making statements.
Latency
Another
and
good sign.
underscore 30
I
dead.
watched her ask the wound nurse
PBJ
humbly
V
what acuity
underscore
weighted
census.
response times would even look like
Staging
operationally.
map.
The wound nurse didn't know. None of us has seen it done here. We know how to speak about values. We rarely get to assign them numbers. Darius took 3 calls and answered none of my glances.
Attached are logs.
He had moved into a lane where men like him survive. Translation, mitigation, slow walking. I could feel the story forming in his mouth. We had a breakdown. We self-identified opportunity. We're moving swiftly. It's not an evil story. It's just the kind that keeps a building this size, the exact same size, year after year. At 6, the union organizers' leaflets had multiplied in car windshields like blossoms. Nobody admitted to reading them. Everyone had a new expression around the mouth. At shift change, I stood at the board. I did the handoff we'd always done and then a different one. I named the numbers out loud, not to insult, to orient. Room 217 pressed at 9,034, answered at 9,046. Turn schedule adhered except 3 a.m. Delayed due to short hands. Wound care at 10,040. No odor. Edges clean. Pain managed with non-farm. Observe. The night CNA whose shoulders still fit her shirt looked like a woman told where the lifeboats are. She nodded, not in fear, but in knowing. A good handoff is a kind of consent. I will carry what you carried in the direction you were walking.
Because of the changes we've
It is
made.
a small, radical
right?
intimacy. It is also paperwork. I
Ellen,
could have gone home then. I could have
Asha,
let the
can you
fuse
share some
burn or
frontline
not burn on
insights?
someone else's time.
Mike,
But the pilot
current
training
teams will
says
be
if the
scheduled
day
by
has
skin
changed
risk,
shape,
not
stay long enough
position,
to see its
and we
edges.
are moving this supply closet closer to the
So I
floor
stayed.
rooms.
I stayed until 8 when families crystallized the day into exit interviews with the parking lot. I stayed until 9 when the building goes quiet enough for you to hear the inside of your own patients. Around 9:30, I found myself in a small break room that believes it is a chaplain. The machine hummed. A poster about back safety hung at an angle so slight it made the optic nerve itch. I adjusted it. That's the kind of person I am.
Together for
A woman who can't abide a tilted
Sign the
thing in a
petition.
room full of
Make a
things
difference.
that pretend straightness.
pay.
Maya came in and leaned against the counter like a person leans against an old friend. She didn't speak because we had spoken all day in the language of glances. After a minute, she told me, quieter than a prayer, that she had been asked last month to standardize response times in the audits for week-over-week comparability. She hadn't agreed. She hadn't refused. She had performed the miracle women like us are trained to execute. She made the spreadsheet ambiguous enough to survive. You think they'll, she said, and the was a universe. I think numbers do what they came to do, I see it. Sometimes slow, sometimes spectacular. Spectacular scares me, she said. Slow exhausts me. Both make people bleed slower, I said. And we stood inside that sentence together. 2 bodies inside a truth you can't sell in a staff meeting. The inspectors did their last pass at 10. They never say we're done. They say words like preliminary and further review and follow-up. Almost. I walked to my car with my body in that state of after adrenaline, after performance, after swallowing. The parking lot was a constellation of leaflets and long days. I sat behind the wheel and did not turn the key. This is where people imagine the hero sends the email. This is where movies cut to a montage and the music does the lifting. But real life is more domestic. It is dinner that didn't get made and a mother who texts, "You good?" And a plant you remember to water because you promised yourself you would not let living things rely on you and then find you unreliable. I drove home, not like a conquering anything. I drove home like a woman whose clothes hold the day like a sponge. In the kitchen, I ate something that reminded no one of a meal. I called my mother and told her about a red button and a badge in a room where air learned a new temperature. She did not say she was proud of me. She said, "I know you use your inside voice." It's how she blesses me. At the small table, the plant looking like it had recovered from an old insult, I opened the laptop. The spreadsheet glowed like a little city after rain. I named the tabs with names that would one day make a stranger believe I was always this sure. Latency 30 AV census. Staging map. Policy crosswalk. I uploaded one by one the attachments I had promised myself earlier. The cursor flickered like a nervous witness. I let it settle. I wrote the email body in words so plain even a boardroom could not misunderstand. Team, per liaison protocol, attached are logs and crosswalks requested. Day saw unannounced presence of OSHA in state. Family witness willing for timeline verification. Key flags. Policy lacks numeric definition for high-risk response. Macro bias. PBJ deltas cluster at nights weekends. Medicaid wind distance adds latency. Request guidance publication of unit facing live dashboard plus family, visible kiosk. Proceeding with normal duties, I read it twice to make sure it did not sound like vengeance. A woman can be punished for sounding like vengeance even when the only knife she brought was a clock. I pressed send. I did not watch the bar.
Prepare to brief
Sleep came
staff
like
committee
mercy.
on proposed
I
metrics.
dreamed again of a button.
Expect
This time
pushback.
not lying. This time
Document
speaking a bell that called not just legs, but
Expect
policy.
pushback.
Morning walked in with the light.
Document
I put my
everything.
scrubs on like armor. The badge clipped home like a ritual. The plant in the window drank a little water like a prayer connecting yesterday to today. The facility greeted me with a set of small differences, the kind that tell you somebody got an email downtown. A laminated sign appeared near the station. Family Council meets Thursday, 6 p.m.f. The macro still existed, but no longer defaulted. The policy binder lived open to the page, where promptly should soon have a number. Ellen met me with an expression I hadn't seen before. Anything that reads like humility might be strategy, but sometimes strategy is a compliment to reality. She asked, in front of staff and families and the volunteer whose eyes will tell the entire building how to act by lunchtime, for frontline insights on operationalizing acuity-weighted response. Schedule turning teams by skin risk, not tradition. Swap the far rooms on nights to the cold station when we're below a headcount threshold.
Thank you.
Set a number for high risk, 5 minutes. Make delay cost someone with a title. She wrote. She wrote like someone is watching her write. Sometimes that's accountability, sometimes it's theater. Often, it's both. Darius breezed through with a coffee and a look that said he had not slept. He caught me in the corner of the station where a plant tries to live. We're going to collaborate on a plan of correction, he said. Partners, right? There are words you don't say out loud that still live in a yes. I nodded.
I know, it's going
I
to be
wasn't
so
going to make him
great
say
when
the
it's
other part,
live.
that a plan of correction is a
I'm
marriage
excited to
between a
share some
problem
of me
and a
ideas
budget,
for
and
improving
budgets are
patient
not
care and
romantic.
efficiency
The
in our
union
new
organizer, I
approach.
heard, had found 4 more CNAs willing
Right,
to
so
put their
let's get
names
down
to a
to the
petition
numbers.
about staffing ratios and back pay for time stolen by float and forget. People like to call it
We can set up
momentum.
2 zones
I
here.
prefer to call it remembering. Remembering
Yes,
you are
that
not
will cut
alone.
down on walking
At 11,
distances.
a young man from IT I had never met
You want
appeared
to
like
use
a
your
myth.
body, your
He installed a
back,
little
and your
box near the
hands
call
to
panel.
protect you
He did not
and your
explain it.
patient.
He did not need to. The new thing chirped lightly when a button went unanswered beyond a threshold someone had decided in a room I could not see. The chirp did not scold. It reminded. Reminders are just gentle
The
punishments
correlation
that ask you to
between longer
volunteer
call
for
light
improvement.
intervals and increased
Kiana stood at
grievance
the station
entries
reading a
is
paper
quite
about
clear.
how to file a grievance
We had to
that had apparently
reschedule
gotten a
twice.
refresh
It was on
overnight.
the 15th,
The
exactly.
font was less offensive.
The
The
delays,
QR code was
they were
bigger.
just
She scanned it with the face of a woman who was finished
We pressed
asking
at
if she may ask.
6:01. We
During
saw
lunch, I
someone
sat
at
outside on the back steps,
6:43.
let the cool pretend it could fix what heat causes. An orderly whose pace reads like a prayer sat beside me. He told me, in a voice that suggested nobody had asked in a while, that his mother died in a place like this, that he had pressed a button and learned the theology of waiting, and that every time he hears a bell, he is inside both buildings at once. He asked me if the inspectors meant it would get better.
M.
I told him the
Johnson
only
is
thing
here.
I know to be true in rooms where change wears a tie, better is a choice you have to budget for.
We must stand
In the
firm on this
afternoon,
decision.
a little
I
parade
understand.
began.
I agree
The
completely.
OSHA team returned with an
Our
ergonomic
message is clear.
specialist who looked at lifts and gloves and grip rails and the angles at which my shoulder would one day send me a bill. The state surveyors asked to see the grievance file again, and this time requested the ones labeled communication breakdown. They tapped the page where the narrative had been bleached to polite. They asked the questions under the politeness. They wrote with pens that did not squeak. And then came the moment I did not expect. Ellen called a huddle and said out loud, without choking, that we would trial a family visible dashboard in the lobby with live response times by wing, and that executive bonuses would adjust accordingly for the quarter, pending corporate approval. She said it like a dare
We
to
are going to
herself.
solve this
She said it
with
like a
math.
woman who knows the only sermon anyone believes is the one that cost the preacher something. A murmur moved through the staff like wind through a wheat field. Hope and fear traveled together. I watched Darius hear the words and calculate
5
the
minutes.
meetings they would require. He did not stop her. He did not clap either. He made a note. Sometimes leadership is just deciding not to flinch in front of the
10
people
minutes
you
for
pay.
moderate risk, 15
Late
for
afternoon
low risk.
again.
Acuity
The
scoring
sun
and
found the
admission.
blinds.
Turn teams
The
scheduled
building
by color-coded
rehearsed its
wristbands,
evening
not
act
tradition.
bills, trays,
Math is a mercy.
familial small talk about football, and missed buses, and the weather that always arrives whether or not anybody deserves it. In 217, Mr. Hart asked with his eyebrows if he was safe. I told him the only true thing I can ever tell someone in a bed, safer than yesterday if we keep our promises.
Yeah, good
He
job.
nodded like that was the right size truth for a day like this. The reveal, people will say, was the badge. They'll say the power turned because I called federal into
I'll
the
just check
hallway,
your pulse
and they
now.
won't be entirely wrong. But that's the movie version. The real reversal happens when a building has to rewrite the sentences it uses to describe what it does. The reveal was not me.
I agree. The brand
The
risk
reveal
is
was the number
significant if we
speaking in a
don't.
language louder than tone. As I signed off for the night, the panel above the station chimed and the new little box chirped because someone had waited too long. A nurse moved sooner than she would have yesterday. Not because she loves more,
And here we have our
because
new
the air has a new
dashboard
temperature and the thermometer is public. I clocked out. My body had the good ache. The ache
Families
you
will
get when you have been the
misinterpret the data.
person you promised
the
yourself you
fear,
would be. The parking lot held fewer leaflets.
or
Rain had
understanding?
found them and turned them to pulp that clung to windshield wipers like confetti
Green for
after a
on
parade
time.
nobody asked for.
Amber for
In the car,
approaching.
I let myself
and
feel
red
one
for
private
late.
thing before heading home. Not victory, not relief. A quiet gratitude for
We
a
talk
day when
about
the truth did
rooms,
not need to
bars,
raise its voice to be
cornfields, and
heard.
women lifting men
But this is
twice
not the
their
part where
weight.
we roll credits. This is the part
we
where a
could pull the
system
money
caught in its
and
reflection
allocate it
decides
based
whether
on
to smash the
facilities
mirror
with the
or pay
greatest
for better
need
lighting.
additional staff.
At home, the plant looked like it had been listening. My mother texted, "Eat something that grew in the ground today." I sliced a peach that tasted like the sun working a double shift. I read the pilot team's follow-up. We are coordinating with state partners.
What will you do when
Next
4
phase will
buttons light
involve
at
plan of
once?
correction with measurable targets. Prepare to brief staff committee on proposed
Nurse
metrics.
Miller, room
Expect
2, step
pushback.
Got it, room
Document everything. Expect pushback. Document everything. The 2 commandments of a woman trying to transform a budget into a conscience. I closed my eyes and pictured the boardroom table I have never sat at. I saw a laminated agenda. I saw coffee cups with lids that promised spill-proof living. I saw someone mispronounce acuity and someone else pretend not to notice. And then I saw the thing I intend to bring into that room, whether I am asked or not. A graph that makes postponement look like a sin. Tomorrow will be harder. Tomorrow always is after a reveal. Tomorrow,
Every reform
Ellen will have to
writes an
choose whether
invoice.
to be the person she sounded like today.
We're on the verge of
Darius
closing
will have to
beds.
choose whether to be the gate
We
or
have
the
to
door.
consider payer
Maya
mix,
will have to choose
donor
whether to click the
whispers,
macro
the
or
thin
the
ice
truth.
we're treading.
Kiana will have to choose between being polite and being a problem.
This is going to be front page
Mr. Hart will
headlines,
have
you
to choose
understand
to
me?
trust the button
Scalps.
again. I will have to choose not to let exhaustion wear my voice down into
Will
something
families
convenient.
stay if the lobby
For
is a
tonight, I
traffic
do the
light of
small things
shame?
that keep a person tied to herself. I set the coffee, I lay my scrubs over the chair, I tell myself I will stretch in the morning and know that I will instead negotiate with time. I whisper a thank you to the version of me who keeps receipts when other people collect
You're
approval.
asking me to believe
And I
survival
sleep.
is obedience to
When
a
I wake,
spreadsheet that
the
hates
world
our
has
patience.
rearranged its picture frames just enough to be noticeable. Emails have
If we
multiplied
close a
like
bed
rabbits
to
under a
keep from
porch.
breaking
The
skin,
subject lines have
we
adopted
close
the
the
hospital's
right bed.
tone. Action items, next steps, alignment. Alignment is what leaders say when
If a
they
donor
need people to
prefers
hold
green
still
boxes
while
to
they
red
grab the
fruit,
wrench.
Let them
On
buy
the
us
unit,
staff and
the new
not
chirp has
plaques.
adjusted our gate. It's a
If a
metronome we
bonus
didn't know we
depends on the
needed.
speed at which we
The
honor a
dashboard
call
in the
for
lobby
help,
is not yet
then
live,
for
but a
once,
paper
a
mock-up
bonus
is
is
taped to the
holy.
wall where families line up at the reception desk. It looks like art. It's a promise. They take pictures of it with their phones like fans of a band that has not yet released an album. Ellen, to her credit or her calculation, has scheduled a working session with 3 CNAs, me, a veteran named Rico whose
Pragmatism
knees
is
sound
fine
like
in a
crumpled
meeting.
paper, and
It's
a
a
newly
massacre at
graduated
a
woman who
bedside.
moves like gravity owes her money. She says we are co-designing. I don't believe in corporate code words, but I believe in sitting at the table with my receipts. So I sit. We talk about zones. We talk about walking distances and
Regulators
where to
don't
place
love us.
supplies so a turn doesn't become a pilgrimage. We talk about flexing staff between wings in ways that don't punish
betrayal
the
to
people who
whom?
already carry the most. We talk about hands
The
and backs
building?
and bodies like the assets they
people
are,
it exists
not the
for?
liabilities the budget keeps writing down. I watch Ellen take notes with something like sincerity. I watch Darius hover in the doorway and not interrupt. Progress sometimes looks like men not talking. At noon, the state surveyors return with a question about the grievance log. They've mapped communication breakdowns to call light intervals. The picture is neither surprising nor merciful. They ask to speak to families. Families agree. Families speak. They speak in the language
new
administrators
flavor.
always claim to want and
More
rarely
changes.
survive, specifics.
Not again.
We pressed at 6,018. We saw someone at 6,043. The person was kind. The delay was not. In 217, Mr. Hart naps with the mouth of a child having a good dream. I tuck the sheet so the corners do not conspire. I glance at the clock. I check the button like a lighthouse keeper whose job it is to rescue light from superstition. Near the end of my shift, something gives. You can feel it. It happens in Ellen's jaw when she signs a memo. It happens in Darius's eyes when a call
Wherefore,
ends. It happens in the sound the staff make when they realize the ratio on tonight's schedule is better than last week's, even if it is not what the law of dignity would prescribe. It happens in the way Kiana speaks to two other daughters, and they don't whisper anymore but talk with their backs straight as if the building had fixed its posture. When the day finally lets go of me, I stand in the doorway of 217 and let the moment take my measure. The button is not blinking.
The meeting of the
The
Community
sheet is a
Oversight
field
Board
at
will now
peace.
come to order.
The chart holds words that do not lie. My body is a country I am trying to govern with wisdom. People will say the reversal happened when the inspectors walked in. They will miss the more subversive truth. The reversal happens the moment a building knows that the people who press the button and the people who answer it can see the same clock. Tonight, the clock belongs to all of us a little more than it did yesterday. And tomorrow, the system will test whether we mean it. Some victories arrive like thunder. Others arrive like paperwork that finally learned how to pronounce your name. The morning the citations posted, the building didn't shake. No alarms, no gasps, no theater. Just an email with a PDF, a subject line that sounded like a shrug, and a deadline that turned everyone's calendar into a courtroom. OSHA wrote the citations in that calm, merciless diction of good lawyering, recognized hazards, foreseeable risk, failure to abate. They named understaffing not as a bad mood, but as a workplace exposure tied to injury and patient harm. The state, arriving a beat later with a letter that pretended to be a neighbor, stapled on its plan of correction demand, define response thresholds, document acuity, verify, quiet thunder, the kind that moves furniture inside your head.
What does the dashboard
Ellen
say?
read the PDFs like scripture she hadn't expected to be canon. At the station, she gathered us with an honesty I don't think she rehearsed. We are going to solve this with math, she said, and the room gave that small animal sound people make when they realize the task in front of them will not be satisfied with slogans. Darius didn't speak, which in a man like him is its own paragraph. The plan started the way all plans start, with a whiteboard pretending to be a future. But for once, the markers weren't drawing arrows from buzzword to buzzword. They were writing numbers we could touch with our shift-worn hands. High risk call,
3 a.m.
light threshold, 5
We
minutes.
failed.
Moderate risk threshold, 10 minutes. Low risk cover calls, 15 minutes. Acuity scoring, Braden scale at admission and daily. Turn teams scheduled by wristbands, not by tradition. Math as a mercy. We stared at the board as if it were a map out of weather. You learn quickly what a 5-minute world requires. It requires feet placed closer to those who press most. It requires supplies at the bedside, not down a hallway chilled like a meat locker. It requires that the distance to the Medicaid wing is not a pilgrimage. It requires that the word promptly stop pretending to be a number. We rewrote the grid. The long hall where Mr. Hart slept got a nurse station satellite, a little outpost with gloves and wipes and those blue pads that absorb not just moisture, but also shame. We rearranged the rooms like chess, moving the highest risk closer to where the boots would be. We measured the steps like they owed us receipts. We cut a window into the supply room door because time hates keys. Ellen did something I didn't expect from a person who had used Sly as a shelter. She moved with the furniture. She lifted, not to be seen, but because there were packages to be lifted. She left her clipboard on the counter and took vitals with the steady tenderness of a woman who had once known how and had misfiled the memory. 1,000 small allegiances broke and reformed under the simple pressure of 5 minutes. Darius convened the meeting he knows how to run. Long table, stacked agendas, executives on speaker, words about alignment, brand risk, partner optics. I was invited, not because anyone needed to show their courage, but because the plan of correction required a staff committee with evidence of frontline participation. Ellen set a chair for me where the eye would land. I sat not like a symbol, but like a clock. We opened with the new dashboard prototype. The lobby wall would get a screen, a public mirror showing live call light intervals by wing. We argued fonts as if legibility were an ethics. Someone said families will misinterpret the data. Someone else asked if the fear was misinterpretation or understanding. I suggested a legend so clean even a banker could not pretend confusion. Green, on time. Amber, approaching. Red, late,
CNA
across all
childcare
wings, for
stipend.
everyone to see. Corporate balked at, for everyone. They proposed email summaries instead. They spoke of context. I spoke of context too. Rooms far as cornfields, women lifting men twice their weight, skin that breaks before excuses do. We did not vote. We did not clap. We put a rectangle on a wall and fed it numbers. The union organizer returned, not to gloat, not to recruit, but to sit at a side table with CNAs and explain what a restorative staffing fund could look like, back pay for missed breaks documented across months, retention bonuses tethered to ratios that made dignity possible, tuition support for CNAs to
I'm just
level up
making sure
and bring
the
their
world
paychecks with
is
them.
still the
She didn't
world.
use the word reparations. She didn't have to. The fund would be seeded by the penalty corporate
We
would
think
pay,
of
by
justice
the
as a
executive
verdict,
bonuses we cut
a
and
gavel.
redirected. When the OSHA
But
compliance
sometimes
officer walked us
it's a
through our
line
own
of
map,
code in a
nobody
scheduling
flinched.
system.
He praised nothing, condemned nothing. He did the simple kindness of asking the right questions. What will you do when 4 buttons light at once? What will you do when someone calls off and the ratio knifes downward? Where does authority
Good
sit at
morning,
night?
everyone. Our lobby numbers for this
The
month
answers
are
could not live
quite
in words.
promising.
They had to
We
live in the
used to manage
choreography at
around
2 a.m.
pain.
We created a role the
Now
budget had never
we
named.
plan for
Night flow
dignity.
lead, a veteran CNA with decision authority
I
to
live here
shuffle
too.
assignments, call a rapid turn team, and ring a supervisor out of bed if 5 minutes became fiction. We wrote that authority down. We posted it.
is
We whispered it into the
late.
walls so the building itself would stop pretending the hierarchy is more
How's your
sacred
back,
than skin.
CNA?
The day the dashboard went live, families came early.
I've just been waiting for
We
an
acknowledged
hour.
them the way you acknowledge
makes
weather
sense.
in a farming town. We see it. We will plant accordingly. In rooms, you can feel it. The tempo change. The 5-minute world teaches bodies a new
families in the
song.
room.
It changes how your shoulder anticipates the reach. It changes where you set the basin down. It changes the tone of a door hinge. It changes the pitch of the station when the panel pings. No more shrugging sighs. People move because the meter is public now. But every reform writes an invoice. The invoice came due in a meeting off the main corridor where the carpet tried to buffer reality. Darius asked me to step in. He closed the door softly. He didn't sit. He looked older than last week by a unit of time called consequence. He spoke in the voice men use when they have rehearsed the speech to be both correct and persuasive. We're on the verge of closing beds, he said. Payer mix is shifting. Bonuses are pegged to response times now, which is ambitious. We've got donors whispering. You know how thin the ice is. You know what happens to buildings like ours when the city needs a headline and the state needs a scalp? You think the families keep their people here if the lobby is a traffic light of shame?
We did not
He didn't call me a
colonize.
traitor, not in that word.
We
He didn't
counted.
need to. It hung in the air like a picture you haven't taken down. I let him finish. I held my hands the way my mother taught me to hold water. I don't intend to spill. Then I said the thing that risked our shared weather. You're asking me to believe survival is obedience to a spreadsheet that hates our patience. You're asking me to confuse managing with care.
The bill came
If
due.
we close a bed to keep
paid.
from breaking
A
skin,
shot
we
of the
close the
restorative
right
staffing
bed.
fund account showing
If
the
a donor
$1.2
prefers
million
green boxes to
balance.
red truth,
We're still
let them
paying.
buy a staff and not
What we
plaques.
dismantled was
And if a
plausible
bonus depends on the
deniability.
speed at which we honor a call for help, then for once, a bonus is holy. He stared like the building had leaned toward me to hear. He found the word people like him are trained to use when a woman like me refuses a smaller story. Pragmatism. Pragmatism
Thank
is
you.
fine in a meeting, I said. It's
All
a
in
massacre
favor?
at a bedside. He winced. He hates melodrama. So do I. What we share is an allergy to cheapness. The difference is that I know numbers are not neutral. Numbers pick a side when you print them on a wall. He tried one more time to keep me in the house he is paid to protect. Regulators
So
don't love
green
us, he
means
said.
everything is
You
on
know that.
track and
The
running
funders don't
smoothly.
trust us.
If it ever
Pulling them
goes
into this
red,
wing
that
like
means
this
we need
is...
to take immediate
What?
action.
I asked. A betrayal? To whom? The building
An
or the people
epilogue
it exists for?
is not an
He
ending.
wanted to say both. He wanted to say, don't be naive. He wanted to say, you can't fix a city with a dashboard.
Celebrate a momentous occasion
He
for
didn't.
our beloved
He said
city.
nothing at all. Sometimes silence is a
1,
man's
2,
last attempt at
3,
gatekeeping.
4, 5.
I did not walk out triumphant. I walked out bearing the bill, higher expectations, less forgiveness, more work. That is the cost of turning a value into a metric. It's a payment I'm willing to make with my back and my patience. I am not willing to pay it with Mr. Hart's skin. There is a flavor to the next weeks that only people who have changed the workflow recognize. Stumbles, mutterings, small mutinies disguised as jokes, a nurse rolling her eyes at the chirp, a scheduler sighing while moving names on a grid whose lines don't love her, an IT kid installing sensor beacons above doorways so the system can learn our gait without accusing us.
When it's green, baby,
The beat
they
becomes
came
part of the
in
music.
time.
The body learns. The
When
building
it's
grudgingly
red,
follows.
we ask
The
why.
state came back with a pen that now knew our names. They proposed something I hadn't
We
let
have a
myself hope for,
significant
a
opportunity
consent
to
agreement,
make an
not to
impact
punish for
on our
spectacle,
community.
but to bind, change the timelines and make the public an audience the building can no longer dismiss. I read the draft like a poem written by a bureaucrat who had once loved someone in a bed. Install lobby-facing dashboards within 30 days. Publish staffing ratios by wing, shift, and payer mix, updated
The
weekly.
data indicates
Create a
significant
restorative
shift
staffing
in
fund,
market
$1.2
trends
million,
for the third
audited,
quarter.
prioritized for CNA retention and tuition. Family council
did
empowered with
experience
voting
several
seats on a new
significant
community
failures
oversight
here,
board.
but we have a clear
Executive
plan to
compensation
address
index
each
to
one
reductions in
moving
call light
forward.
latency and pressure injury rates.
We need to start with the
Verified quarterly.
dashboard,
Grievance portal
ask the
response.
CNA,
Within
confirm with the
24
family,
hours with resolution
then
targets
talk
and
money.
public reporting. They even wrote poetry into policy, dignity guarantees. If a high-risk call runs late beyond a set threshold, a credit flows to the restorative fund in that
We
resident's
need to
name.
ensure that
Delay
every
becomes
voice
debt paid
is
not by
heard.
the resident, but by the people who designed the
Absolutely.
delay.
Open communication
Poetic
is
justice,
key for
line
our
item.
community's growth.
Corporate postured.
Sometimes you
They
need to
always
listen
do.
closely.
They threaten to appeal, to reframe, to rebrand.
We
Then the
need to
board's
focus
council
on
read
these
the tea leaves
numbers.
and the balance sheets and made the only choice that doesn't bleed more.
Let's get
They
you
agreed.
comfortable.
Not because their hearts learned a new song, because the numbers made refusal louder than compliance. Ellen's punishment was
We must
fable-shaped.
consider the human
Not a
cost
firing,
behind
not a
these
promotion,
numbers,
but an assignment.
ensuring our decisions
She would present
reflect a
monthly in the
genuine
lobby to
understanding
families
of
and
their
staff
impact.
on the numbers, the misses, and the plan for making the next month less red. She would bring charts, not adjectives. She would take questions until the room had no questions left.
There's a
She took
cost.
the news with a swallow.
Some doors
And
don't
then,
open
to
for
her
people
credit
who
or her
came in
instinct
through
for
the service
self-preservation,
entrance.
she bought a notebook thicker than a Bible and started writing. Darius wasn't exiled either. The community board formed around him like a jury he couldn't dismiss. Kiana as chair, 2 CNAs, a
You're
neighborhood
turning the
pastor,
house
a retired
against the
wound care
house.
nurse whose hands look like hard-earned wisdom, a data analyst from the city's health department, and one seat for administration with a vote that counted.
itself.
Exactly as much as
I
the
made
others.
it answer the door
They
when
met
the
in the
bell
chapel
rang.
because conference rooms make people pretend.
Get me
In the
10
chapel,
cc's
with
of
its stained glass
Epi
that bleeds color into even the
Vitals
ugliest
are
days,
stable, patient
Darius
is doing
sat and
well.
watched his power braided into something larger and less comfortable. He spoke. He listened more. He learned to ask, what does the dashboard say? As often as he asked, what will the donor think?
Survival
Mr. Hart,
is
he
managing
healed.
around pain.
Not overnight. Bodies don't do miracles on
Liberation
schedule.
is
The wound
budgeting
edges
for
knit
the
like a
absence
treaty.
of it.
The pink turned the humble beige of skin, recalling itself. He laughed again, the way he used to, and the hallway remembered what laughter does to antiseptic. Kiana stopped bringing cookies shaped like leaves and started bringing a clipboard, not to scold, but to steward. She ran family council like a town hall with pastries.
She
She
goes,
did something I
"If
had
they
not
let her
seen
bring a
before
CNA
and will
and a
advocate for
family
forever.
member."
She taught families the math. She explained acuity bands and response thresholds and why 5 minutes is not a
Put a clock
suggestion.
on the wall
She
you
showed them
can't
how to
take
read
down.
the dashboard like a weather map. She gave them the grievance, QR, and told them
This
grievances
agreement
weren't
represents a
rudeness.
significant
They were a
step
sacred
forward,
act of
ensuring
citizenship inside a
accountability and
building that had once
transparency for the
asked them to be
community.
nice about their father's pain. The first month's lobby meeting was a fear, then it was a right. Ellen stood beside the screen, voice steady. Green boxes bragged a little. Red
As you
boxes
can see
blushed.
right here
Amber
in
whispered,
section
almost.
3.2, it
She did not
clearly
explain away the misses.
states.
She named them Wing B, 3 a.m. We failed, and the word failed landed in the lobby without destroying it. She asked for 2 more hires on nights and then looked at the community board where Kiana nodded and said,
Hello,
we'll
I am
approve
sorry
and
we
we'll
were
track
late.
retention with childcare stipends. We made a childcare room out of a storage space whose previous purpose was to hold a guiltless amount of seasonal decor. A toddler ran across the hall with a plastic truck as if proof that the future had found a way to sit in the same building as this past. Not everything softened. The billing department balked at transparency about payer mix. They said privacy and competitive harm and 1,000 other incantations. The community board said, publish. A week later, a color-coded bar appeared alongside the dashboard. Medicaid, Medicare rate commercial. Other, each slice a confession and a plan. We didn't use the numbers to shame the poor. We used them to shame distance.
Now we
I
store
would love to tell you
tomorrow.
that after the consent agreement and the dashboard and the fund, the nights never bit again. They did. People called out. A pair of hands broke under a lift we should have had 4 for. The chirp chirped into
We
annoyance,
practiced the
and then
5-minute
into
world.
habit, and then into the kind of grace you don't notice until it's gone.
This really helps
We
us
missed
be
5 minutes
honest.
sometimes. When we did, the red square didn't whisper, it announced. The fund tallied another credit under a resident's name, and the building paid into dignity like a tithe. There were prices I paid that don't look good on a poster. A sister facility declined to interview me for a weekend slot I had once thought I wanted. Word
When I
travels.
press that button,
Gatekeepers keep gates.
I feel
A
the
friend who loved me,
whole
but
building
also loved a
answer.
quiet life, let our texts thin to weather reports. At a baby shower, someone said, Asha always makes everything political, and I smiled and refilled their punch and
The data
remembered to stretch
clearly
that night
indicates
so
a
my back
positive
would be
trend.
ready to carry freedom again in the morning. What did I get? Not a
Did
parade.
she forgive Darius?
A job offer, a regional system asked me to help design equity metrics,
The data
boring
indicates
words for the
we should
alchemy of
focus
turning
on the
care into
second
numbers
quarter
that can't be lied
projections.
about. I said yes on 2 conditions. fund a CNA to RN pipeline with paid
What
time
if
for
the button
school,
stops
and build the
working?
child care stipends into
What
the
if the
budget as a
screen
line that
lies?
doesn't evaporate after the cameras go home. They agreed. Not because I am irresistible, but because the dashboard on our lobby wall had gotten a little famous.
You can do
Before I
this.
left my wing to split my days between the
button is a
bedside
promise,
and the meetings
and
where people try to
promises break.
domesticate
When
change,
it does,
I
you
visited
don't lower your
217.
expectations.
Mr. Hart sat
You
in
raise
sunlight
your
that made
volume.
dust look like confetti. I
You
pressed
scan
the
the
button
QR
on the
code,
wall on purpose.
you write the
I wanted to hear
grievance,
the building
you go to
answer
the
itself.
meeting.
The panel pinged. The chirp,
You
chirp.
become impossible
Footsteps.
to manage
5 minutes?
and easy
Less.
to serve.
The CNA arrived with her breath still cool from the hallway, eyes kind, hands competent. She found me standing there like a woman on a threshold, wanting to bless something without making it weird. "You good?" she asked. "I am," I said.
We used to
"I'm
be
just
a
making
place
sure
where
the world is
patience
still the
was
world."
worshipped.
She laughed,
Now we're
and
a
the room
place
held
where
it like
time
water
is
in a
time.
good cup. We think of justice
This
as a
is
verdict, a
unbelievable.
climax, a gavel. Sometimes it's a line of code in a scheduling system that moves a person closer to the person who needs them. Sometimes it's a bonus that loves the same things the families do. Sometimes it is a calendar invite called Lobby Numbers that shows up every month
We
and
taught
keeps his
3 more
promises.
buildings how to hang a
Darius,
clock they
months
can't
in,
take down.
stood at the chapel podium one Thursday and said, "We used to manage around pain. Now we plan for dignity." It was a sentence that tasted like he had fought it and decided to keep it. He looked at me, not for approval, but as if to say, "I live here too." Gatekeepers can learn to open when you show them the mechanism. It doesn't absolve the years they kept it shut. It makes tomorrow less cruel. Ellen learned to say late
You
without
are so
flinching, to ask a
precious.
CNA how their back is and mean it, to set up
Every
a rolling
individual
stool because
possesses
sometimes
inherent
care
value
requires a
and
different
worth,
angle.
deserving of
She learned the
respect,
ritual of standing in the
autonomy,
lobby
and
and
the
letting
right
a
to
grandmother describe a weight
self-determination.
as if time itself
And
could
with
be
that,
redeemed by
we
the confession.
conclude our
It
annual
can, a
performance
little,
review.
not because words fix wounds, because words now drag dollars behind them.
I want
We
to
wrote the
thank
resident dignity
community
charter with the
for their
families in the room.
unwavering
We put the right
partnership
to a
and
defined
support.
response time on page 1, not buried like a scandal. We posted it not just on a bulletin board that nobody reads, but next to the dashboard, where green and amber and red could consult it and adjust their tongues. We trained new hires on it the way you train someone to carry fire. We failed sometimes. We wrote that down too. And when the corporate office sent a photographer to capture our transformation story, we let them take pictures of hands, not faces. Hands on rails, hands on shoulders, hands holding pens over logs, hands touching the call button like a
quiet
relic
woman
finally
with a
restored to an
badge,
altar
a
that
spreadsheet
deserved
with a
it.
temper,
People
a
ask me
building
now,
with a new
at church
soul,
and in
a
line at the grocery
community that
store,
realized
if
it
it was
wasn't
worth
an
it,
audience.
making enemies, making
Share it
metrics,
if you
making work
want.
heavier so that it could also be lighter.
Turn it into
I
your
tell
own
them what my
house
mother
if
told me
you
when I was
dare.
15 and thought endurance was the whole religion. If your survival requires someone else to swallow their need, you haven't survived. You've colonized. We did not colonize. We counted. The viral version of this story, if that's what the internet needs, will look like a reveal and a raid and a dashboard that shamed a
Recognized
building
hazards.
into love. The
Foreseeable
truth
risk.
is tenderer and more ferocious. A community taught its institution to hear a bell as a bill. The bill came due. We paid. We're still paying. But now the people paying include the people who once timed their compassion around lunch.
We are going to solve
In the
this
end,
with math.
what we dismantled wasn't Ellen or Darius or even corporate. We dismantled the plausible deniability that sits between a button and a body. We dismantled the word promptly and replaced it with minutes. We dismantled best efforts and replaced it with verify. We dismantled grateful patient as the only acceptable family posture and replaced it with informed partner with voting rights and a QR code. I carry costs. I also carry a key card
learn
that now
quickly
opens
what a
rooms it
5-minute
didn't used
world
to.
requires.
Not because my badge changed color, because the building learned to be accountable to the
rewrote
same
the
clock
grid.
I am.
It's a
Listen,
small outpost
somewhere
of
down
care,
the hall, a
cutting
bell
down
rings.
travel time.
Somewhere else, a red square
We
blushes and then
rearranged the
disappears into
rooms
green
like
because
chess.
someone's shoes knew how to become wings. And in a lobby where sunlight commits a daily miracle through glass, a screen glows, and a woman with a clipboard explains to another woman with worry lines what green means and what to do when it isn't, justice is not a crescendo. It is a tempo. We changed ours. Epilogues aren't endings.
Everything
They're the
looks
breath you
good,
take
dear.
after the run, the sweep of your
Just a
palm
little
over your
blinking
chest to find your
Thank you.
own pulse and confirm the heart
Now,
is still
gently
voting
roll to your
yes.
side.
When people ask how the
Now,
story
gently roll
closes,
to your
they
side.
want fireworks, a ribbon
The new
cutting, a
fiscal
speech
targets
with a
are
mic and a
ambitious.
city seal. What I can
We'll
give
need to
them is
optimize
smaller
every
and truer.
department.
A building that
Agreed.
learned
This
how to
quarter
count out
demands
loud,
innovation.
a community that
This
learned
new
how to listen with
dashboard
its feet,
prototype
and
offers
a
a
button
public
that
mirror.
belongs to different people than it used to.
I think
Months later, the
email
lobby
summaries
smells
are
like
much
coffee and
The
disinfectant
skin
and
will
something else
break
we
before
earned,
the excuses
accountability. The screen glows with numbers that tell on us and lift us up in the same breath. Green boxes hum, Amber glints and scolds.
We did not
Red
vote.
arrives like a lesson we
We put a
already wrote into the
rectangle on a
budget.
wall and fed it
A
numbers.
grandmother points to the legend and explains it to a grandson as if she
This
were
new
decoding a
restorative
weather map.
staffing fund
When it's
will
green,
provide
baby,
back
they came in
pay,
time.
retention
When it's
bonuses,
red,
and
we ask
tuition
why.
support.
Kiana chairs the community board
What
with
will you
grace,
do
sharpened
when
into
4
policy.
buttons light at
Her
once?
clipboard has tabs like a filing cabinet, latencies, staffing, fund, grievances, and something that used to be theory and now paying rent, childcare. The restorative staffing fund took a shape you could wrap your hands around. Back pay arrived like snow in spring, late but still water. Tuition checks printed with the same seriousness the corporation once reserved for executive travel. We gave people ladders that weren't metaphors. Ellen keeps her promise with the regularity of grace. On the first Thursday, she stands by the screen and speaks a language that used to sound like marketing and now sounds like math.
We are on the verge
She
of
names the
closing
defeats
beds.
without shrinking from them, and she lets the room hear the plan before anyone asks for it. She
Will
isn't a
families
hero.
stay if the law
She's
is
a person
traffic
learning
light
to
of
be
shame?
measured by the right things. You can watch it. The way humility looks different when the mirror is a public one. Darius learned a slower miracle. He learned to sit without owning the room. He learned the liturgy of numbers.
If a bonus
Start with the
depends on the
dashboard,
speed
ask the
at which we
CNA,
honor a
confirm
call
with the
for
family, then talk
for
money.
once, a bonus
His voice
is
carries the
holy.
weight of someone who knows the word gatekeeper can soften or slice, and he is learning to use it like a hinge instead. He lost a donor who preferred nice stories.
You're
He found
betraying
3
our
neighbors who
kinship,
preferred
Asha.
true
The
ones.
regulators will come
We
down
turned the
hard
chapel
on us.
into the
Who
city's
are you
most
truly
honest
betraying,
conference room.
Darius? The building or the people
Stained
it
glass
exists
paints
for?
every meeting in the colors of a promise we didn't make lightly. On the long table, paper cups, agendas, the dignity charter with fingerprints all over its margins. On the wall,
for
a
crying out
calendar
loud.
nobody ignores.
Seriously.
On the chairs, backs that hold people who haven't slept enough but refuse
how
to
does this
confuse
work?
fatigue with surrender. And me? I split my days between the hall and the rooms where policy pretends to be too complicated for the hands who carry it. I still lift bodies. I still tape dressings and say, "Let's get you comfortable," in a voice I inherited from my mother's good throat days. I also sit with spreadsheets that used to
We
frighten
have an
people and
opportunity
bend them toward
to
mercy.
make a real
The
difference
regional
here.
system asked me to design equity metrics. I asked for uniforms with pockets big enough to carry truth. We are negotiating, which is harder. There's a cost. There always is. Some doors don't open for people who came in through the service entrance carrying a caliper and a conscience. A sister facility won't return my emails. A woman I love like Ken sends me subtweets about performative reformers, and I pretend not to notice because I know the real fight is local. Gatekeepers still patrol the fence line between order and justice, and sometimes they guard the wrong side because it kept them
This
safe
gives you the
once.
language of
I don't hate them.
accountability.
I just don't let them hold the keys unsupervised. The accusation still finds me from time to time, stuck in place with nice stationery. "You work with regulators," a cousin says over college. "You turn the house against the house." I let the
We will
first heat
approve
leave
the
the
request
room.
for more night
Then
staff.
I say the thing that took me
With
years to
child
say without
stipends,
shaking.
the
I
system
didn't
is
turn the house
truly
against
working for our
itself.
community.
I made it answer the door when the bell rang. Survival versus liberation. People still want to set them up as rivals at a debate nobody wins. Survival
Not
keeps the
everything's
building
softened.
open.
The building
Liberation
department's
decides
still
what the
boss.
building does with its
The
open
community
doors.
board says,
Survival asks for
"Publish."
patience while a wound decides whether to behave. Liberation demands we make the behavior impossible. I stood in front of a room of executives once, a dinner they called a listening session, because they feared the word reckoning might stain the tablecloth. I didn't dress it up. I told them the truth as plainly as an invoice. Survival is managing around pain. Liberation is budgeting for the absence of it. Survival is a macro that says prompt because your donors like the sound. Liberation is 5 minutes in writing with a penalty when you miss. Survival is a clinical tone that soothes families into silence. Liberation is a dashboard that gives them a microphone before they need one. Survival is a bonus that pays you for press releases. Liberation is a bonus that pays you for minutes shaved off a call that never should have been lonely. They looked at me like a woman who had mistaken herself for a CFO. I looked back like a CFO who had mistaken himself for a chaplain. Somewhere between us, the math declared a truce with morality. Sometimes the system tries to atone
Justice
with
is not a
gestures.
gavel.
It sends me to
It's a line of
conferences where
code
people
in
have
the
land use
scheduling
and
system.
breakouts with names that promise to extract
We
ethics
used to
like oil.
manage around
I go,
pain.
they let me bring a CNA and a family member and
Now
put them
we
at the mic
plan
before
for
anyone with the
dignity.
title. When they ask for best practices, I don't give them a toolkit. I give them a timer. Put a clock on the wall you can't take down, I say, and then put your money where your lady is. The consent
about we
agreement
focus on
matured into
resident
something
dignity,
messier and
always
better than
making
discipline.
that's it.
The state didn't just fine us and leave.
what about true
They took a
partnership with
seat,
families?
non-voting
We're
but
not
present,
just offering a
and let our
service.
improvements
We're
embarrass their
upholding a
inaction in
promise,
other zip codes.
a commitment
The
to a
city,
better
not to be
future for
outdone,
all.
adopted our dashboard template for every nursing home within reach of their grant program. We didn't become an exception. We became a proof of concept that refused to be fenced. The resident dignity charter grew teeth. Families cited like case law. New hires sign it like an oath, not a form. We added 3 lines after a bruising night taught us humility again. If you are late, you will say, "We were late," not "We were busy." If you must make someone wait, you will choose the person whose body can afford it. You will never ask a family to be patient without offering them a plan and proof. We taped those lines to every station next to the bottle of hand gel, so clean hands and clean language live side by side. Mr. Hart? He decamped to his daughter's home. The day he left, the whole hallway found a reason to be near the front door. His laugh filled the morning like a hymn off key and perfect anyway. The CNA who'd been night flow lead on the worst nights hugged him with the careful strength of a person who knows what skin costs to fix. I pushed his chair over the threshold as if it were a line between weather systems. Kiana cried the way daughters cry when the future hands them a receipt that isn't all debt. She still chairs the board. "We're not done," she says every meeting, because that's how love refuses retirement. In the old storage room, the one we cleaved into a childcare space, a toddler builds towers of foam blocks and knocks them down with the focused glee of a tiny god. His mother charts on her break, shoulders relaxed in a way you can't fake. We used to store wreaths and ceremony there. Now we store it tomorrow. There's a training lab we built off the main corridor. 2 beds, a mock call panel, a whiteboard that pretends to be a chalkboard because nostalgia sometimes helps people learn. I teach there on Thursdays after rounds with a thermos of tea and a voice that carries across tile. We practice the 5-minute world. We practice how to say, "I'm here," in a way that melts time. We practice how to hand off without lying. We practice how to take a grievance like a gift, not a threat. On the last Thursday of each month, we invite everyone, families, volunteers, housekeeping, security, even the billing department to a drill. We press the button. We let it ring. We let people feel how long a minute is when you need something. Then we press it again and measure our arrival not with praise, but with the astonished relief of a room that might have stayed alone and didn't. When I press that button, I feel the whole building answer. Not because it loves me, because we rewired who it thinks it serves. We reach into the wall and change the owner of the silence. People ask about forgiveness. They ask if I forgave Ellen for the way she folded my paper and smiled like the numbers were rude. They ask if I forgave Darius for the way he clothed fear and pragmatism and tried to sell me back to myself. Forgiveness is too easy a word for a system. What we did is harder. We put them to work. The racist gets assigned to the community he starved. The assimilationist learns to follow a black woman's math. That's not revenge. That's curriculum. Once, at a family council, a teenage boy asked a question nobody had prepared for. He stood there, tall as a future, and said, "What if the button stops working? What if the screen lies?" The room went quiet, not in fear, in respect. His grandmother put her hand on his back, and her palm asked me to answer like I mean it. "The button is a promise," I said, "and promises break. When it does, you don't lower your expectations. You raise your volume. You scan the QR. You write the grievance. You go to the meeting. You learn the numbers like you learned your bus route. You become impossible to manage and easy to serve. And if the screen lies, we will know because you were there. That's why we built this with you, not for you." He nodded like he'd just been handed a set of keys. At church, the ushers know me as the woman who stands after the benediction and picks up the program someone left behind because small orders are the practice run for big ones. My mother sings harmony so quiet, you only hear it if you know where to listen. After service, a deacon asks about our building with curiosity that doesn't require gossip. I tell him the truth in a sentence he can carry to his nephew. We used to be a place where patience was worshipped. Now we're a place where time is tithed.
That's not revenge.
The internet found our story. Clips from the loving meetings traveled like swallows. Some people cheered. Some people spat. A troll brigade tried to rename dignity, an indulgence, an efficiency, an alibi. We didn't argue. We posted a dashboard and let it speak. We taught 3 more buildings how to hang a clock they can't take down. We sent our policy template like a casserole to a city that just lost a paper-thin excuse for delay. Let them roast our tone. Numbers don't stutter. In the rooms where budgets try to outvote bodies, I keep a single line tacked to the corkboard above my laptop. It's the line I use when the sunken place sends me an invitation with RSVP in gold foil. I will never mistake being managed for being free. It's my north. It's the difference between surviving insider cruelty and rewriting its user manual. On the anniversary of the day, the inspectors arrived. Quiet thunder and clipboards like mirrors. We held a small ritual that looked like a party and wasn't. The families brought food like neighborhoods do when they're proud and tired. The staff wore name tags with first names only because titles interfere with gratitude. The toddlers drove their plastic trucks under a table where the elders blessed them without being asked. We stood in the lobby, and Kiana read from the Digby Charter like it was scripture and science in one binding. Ellen presented the year's graph, red shrinking, green swelling, amber learning not to hover. Darius said a sentence and meant it. And then we did the only thing that matters. We pressed the Training Lab's call button, and we counted out loud together, 1,000, 1,000, until feet arrived. They came in under 4. People cheered not like a sports bar, but like a courtroom where justice finally spoke. And there was no judge. There was a screen, and a bell, and a building that answered to the right authority. If you need a benediction, here it is. In places built to make people wait, liberation is a clock that bills the delay. We wrote that into policy. We tattooed it onto paper and onto our patients. We paid for it in meetings and in backs and in small humiliations that taught us to stop applying makeup to minutes. I still walk the long haul sometimes. The one that taught me distance is a form of violence and can be audited into repentance. I run my hand along the rail and feel the grooves where hands have told the wall their secrets. I stop outside 217 and say a prayer that has nothing to do with religion and everything to do with keeping promises. The button blinks for someone, a small, insistent light that used to be a suggestion and is now a commandment. Someone goes, on time, not because they are nice, because we changed who the button serves. That's the story people call viral when they taste its courage and pass it on. A quiet woman with a badge, a spreadsheet with a temper, a building with a new soul, a community that realized it wasn't an audience. Share it if you want. Turn it into your own house if you dare. What matters isn't what happened to us. What matters is what happens to the next person who presses a quarter-sized promise and refuses to swallow their need. Listen, there it is again. The bell. And footsteps, many, answering like a choir that finally learned the melody.